This is the Dell 3050 Micro, an OptiPlex business class desktop launched in 2017 with the LGA 1151 chipset socket. This particular variant was compatible with Intel Core 6th and 7th gen processors, and we're going to give it a bit of an upgrade. Along the front, we have two USB 3.0s, a headphone jack, a dedicated microphone jack, and our power button. Along the back, we have 1 gig Ethernet, two USB 2.0s, two more USB 3, native DisplayPort, HDMI, and a power connector. This particular unit came with the i3 7100T, which is a 35-watt processor. We're going to give this a bit of an upgrade, try 4 different processors in it, and see what it can really do here in 2026. We're going to give it an NVMe drive, upgrade it to Wi-Fi 6E, give it additional RAM, put Windows 11 on it, and we're going to try its stock i3 7100T, the Intel Celeron G3900, the i5 7500T, and the i7 7700T processor. To start, we're going to remove this retaining screw and slide the entire front casing forward. From here, we can see inside our machine, including our 2.5-inch drive caddy, which we could use for secondary storage, though we're not going to do that in this video. We're going to pull out the caddy and set it to the side. We can see that SATA connector, our NVMe drive bay, and our Wi-Fi card. Pulling these two clips, we can remove the heat shroud and fan, exposing our 2 RAM sticks and our CPU heatsink. This device currently has one 4GB stick in its bays, which we will set to the side and use for a new project. Our NVMe drive is a Western Digital 256GB NVMe drive. This is an adaptable NVMe drive bay, able to fit full-size or half-size drives. We're going to take out that screw, we're going to move it to its full-size position, insert our NVMe drive lining up that notch, and put in a retaining screw. This device did not have its original screw in it from when it was decommissioned, so I just grabbed one off another parts PC I had on the shelf. And then you will screw it in, locking that drive in place. Now it's time to remove our Wi-Fi card. The original card that shipped with this machine is the Intel Dual Band Wireless AC8265, or in shorthand, the 8265NGW. This is capable of Wi-Fi 5 or 802.11ac, which can go up to 867 megabit per second, and has Bluetooth 4.2. We're going to remove that retaining screw, take off that plastic cover and our antennas, and we're going to replace it with this. This is an Intel AX210 Wi-Fi 6E card. This card is capable of reaching speeds up to 2.4 gigabits per second with Wi-Fi 6E 802.11ax, and it has onboard Bluetooth 5.4, which is just going to give us a lot more bandwidth and remove the need for it to be on dedicated Ethernet. Now it's time to put in our RAM, and we're going to upgrade this with 2 16GB RAM sticks. We'll line up the notches for the bottom slot and slide the RAM stick into place, pressing down on both corners until you hear that final click. And we'll do the same with the second card. Right now this has the default CPU in it, and we're going to close this up and give it some benchmarks with its equipment as is. This device shipped with an i3 7100T, which is a 7th gen Intel processor in Kaby Lake architecture. This is a 14nm chip with 2 cores and 4 threads, with a base clock speed of 3.4 GHz. And this is by no means a high-performance chip, but it is very common to see in a lot of devices like this, which were just made for light business use. We're going to plug in our mouse and keyboard, our DisplayPort connector, and our power. And in trying to start it up, we run into our first issue, which apparently this motherboard or CPU really did not like our RAM sticks, and it would not boot at all. So we actually had to remove the 32GB sticks and put in 2 8GB sticks in its place, bringing our total to still a respectable 16GB of RAM, though it's not quite as much as we wanted originally. Then the device actually boots and we don't get the angry beeping. But we still didn't get anything on our display, and for some odd reason, only the HDMI port on this model was working. I don't know if something happened to the display port, but as soon as we plugged in the HDMI, we were able to see everything on the monitor. We go through the entire Windows 11 install process, run all of our updates, install Steam, and we can do our first benchmark with one of my favorite levels in any game ever, the Silent Cartographer from Halo CE in the Master Chief Collection. And I'll be pulling all of my metrics from MSI Afterburner and its real-time tracking systems. I'm going to play through the same level with the same settings with all 4 of our CPUs, running both the anniversary graphics and the original OG graphics from when it released in 2001. And we'll go into some comparison benchmarks with all 4 of them later. And with the i3, the gameplay is not amazing. It's playable, but it is very rough, it is very choppy, and I would not consider it a smooth experience in the anniversary graphics. Switching over to the OG graphics, it actually handles things pretty well. While there's still an occasional stutter, the gameplay itself is pretty smooth, averaging around 30 FPS, which is definitely playable, and I would rather use this than not play the game. Those are the performance metrics for this as a stock system, so now it's time to swap out the CPUs. We're going to start with the Celeron chip. We're going to pull out the i3 that's in there and set it to the side, and in its place we're going to put this Celeron G3900. The G3900 is actually part of the 6th gen Skylake architecture line, though it does still work in this socket. This is a 2-core, 2-thread 14nm chip with a clock speed of 2.8 GHz. But interestingly, this actually has a higher TDP than any of the other chips we'll be trying. This is a 51-watt chip, while all of our other CPUs are T variants that pull only 35 watts. So even though this is our lowest performer, it is actually going to pull the most power and have the most thermal throttling. And while I can say that this device is technically capable of running chips that pull 51 watts, it is not designed to do that long term. Then we'll apply new thermal paste, put the heatsink back on, close up this device, and it's time to test again. And I can immediately tell, even in the responsiveness of Windows 11, this chip is just not gonna cut it. Things are very sluggish, and it took so long for the game to even load. And while it is still technically playable, it is rough. We are struggling even to get a solid 10 FPS, and even with the OG graphics, it is not as good as it could be, which is to be expected from a chip like this, but it is still notable that you can technically load the game and play through things. Moving on, we're going to do the exact same process, but this time we are going to go with the Intel i5-7500T. Just like the i3, this is a 7th gen Kaby Lake architecture CPU, 4-core, 4-thread, going up to 3.3 GHz, though its base speed is 2.7. As we hop into our game, things are much more responsive. We are seeing more consistent frame rates, even in high action sequences. And this is feeling so much closer to the Xbox 360 and OG Xbox experience with this game. It is so much smoother, still looks great, and I can actually play this, and I don't feel bad about what I am seeing. And then one more time, we're going to swap out this CPU. This is the i7-7700T processor, also 7th gen, Kaby Lake, but this is a 4-core, 8-thread processor with a base speed of 2.9 GHz going up to 3.8. This is the fastest chip this particular device is rated for, and I'm very excited to see how it performs. Interestingly though, when I put this in here, it still registered as the i5 variant, so we had to give it a quick restart to clear out any caches, and then we were good to go, and it recognized the 7700. Now, one thing I did not catch when I was doing this performance testing is I did not have hyper-threading enabled, so we were actually running this i7 only with 4 cores, 4 threads. I didn't get a chance to record what happened after I enabled that, but we got about 15% more performance over the base configuration. Loading in with the i7, everything felt so much snappier. It was very responsive, it was clean, it felt more like a modern processor rather than something from 2017. And loading into the Halo experience, it actually feels like stock. With the anniversary graphics, things are snappy, they're responsive. I actually feel more limited by the quality of my monitor than the performance of this device. Even though there were a few areas where I felt it stutter just a moment, it was a very enjoyable experience, and I actually played on this for a while, forgetting that I was recording. It looks so smooth, it feels even better than what I remember on the OG Xbox. Now we're going to look at all of these side by side, starting them from the same moment and seeing how things feel choppy or smooth, and just kind of what the differences are between them. All of these tests had the same settings running through Steam Master Chief Collection with Halo CE Anniversary and the standard graphics. We were running a 60Hz 1080p monitor, VSync turned off with performance graphics. With our Celeron, we're seeing an average of 11 frames per second with our Anniversary Edition graphics, jumping up to around 29 frames per second on the OG. With the i3 and the anniversary graphics, we're looking at an average of about 15 frames per second, jumping to an average of 37 frames per second in combat on the OG graphics. With the i5, we're seeing averages around 25 frames per second with the anniversary graphics, with our OG graphics score coming in around 78 frames per second while in combat. With our i7, we're sitting at an average of 33 frames per second on our anniversary graphics, definitely playable, and there are spikes up to 45. When we swap out of the anniversary graphics into the original ones, we are seeing spikes over 100 FPS with the i7. Overall, I was impressed actually with each of these CPUs except for the Celeron. If you can in any way avoid it, don't get a Celeron chip, get something a little bit nicer. While the i7 by far had the smoothest experience, I would still play this with the i5, and in a pinch, the i3, it is still better than not playing Halo at all. Let me know if you have any questions about this video or how to set up a machine like this, and which variant of this machine you would be comfortable playing on.